This episode marks the beginning of a new segment on the Practical Enthusiast YouTube channel, and the idea behind this is to introduce some more diverse vehicles, some more interesting repairs that I wouldn't normally cover in my own home garage. To give you a little bit of backstory is, I started a part-time job, really just one day a week, Fridays only, working at a local auto repair and restoration shop called Blue Label Racing here in Kansas City. So this shop specializes in all kinds of interesting vehicles, from autocross cars like Miatas all the way up to high-end supercars like Ferraris and Lamborghinis. So the idea is here to show you cool cars that I wouldn't normally be able to afford and show them on my normal home garage videos. And also show some daily work that the shop does, replacing brake pads on cars that I wouldn't normally see, all the way up to engine removals and replacements and rebuilds and all things in between. So I'm really excited about this new proposition. I don't know what this new segment's going to be called, but I hope to make it a fairly consistent, maybe even a weekly type episode type of deal. So to start things off, let's go into the shop and see what it's all about. That's right, first thing you see when you walk in the door is a Ferrari F355 that is in quite a disassembled state. Doesn't even have the engine in it, or transmission, or windows, or windshield. And this is the kind of cool stuff I'm talking about, stuff we wouldn't see in my home garage, that's for sure. And then right next to it's an NSX, a Land Rover Defender 110 that's highly modified, along with a lot of other cool high-performance vehicles that you've come to love. And over on the lift is this pretty sweet original Mustang. That's not exactly stock, I would say. Working on it right now is the other mechanic here, the true brains of the operation, Jeremy. Yeah, he races this thing. Really puts the racing in the Blue Label Racing name, isn't that right?
We try.
I haven't personally seen it race, but what do you race this thing in?
So I race in SCCA. I race it in the KMT class. A couple different configuration changes. The big wing comes off. But when we put the big wing on and all the other fun bits, it races in the Optima Search for the Ultimate Street Car Challenge. So I've got about just a little over a month left before I leave for Road America in Wisconsin, and a huge amount of work left to finish up.
Just little things, you know. Like
redesigning the new front suspension with new brakes, because the engine's going to make a ton more horsepower now when it gets tuned with the turbo. So
turbos, and there's that turbo he's talking about.
Finish that up and finish the intercooler piping up. So huge amount of work to do. So
it's like an actual reality show right there, where you got to finish everything up in 13 days.
Right.
Except the stress is real here.
Right.
What kind of racing is that? Is that like circuit racing? Actually on the track?
Actually on the track. Yeah. So they do a little bit different type of things. So in their competition, they have an actual set day where you do road course. They have an autocross, and then they have a speed stop, which is a tiny little autocross course, which you try to do as quickly as you can, and then you have to stop within a box. And then they also do a cruise, which the car has to complete a cruise and make sure that it's actually street worthy.
Street worthy. Street worthy means that it. Could you define what street worthy means exactly?
License, registration, insurance.
There you go. It doesn't have to actually be comfortable. It doesn't have to be quiet.
It's not comfortable. It's not all that quiet. It's
not all that streetable.
I drive it on the street all the time.
There you go. There you go.
That's what makes it street legal.
Minimal requirements to qualify it as street legal, but It makes it all the more cool, that's for sure. So you can see many modifications have been done, but it still has a sort of original look, which is really cool. So that's one of the really interesting long-term tenets of this garage, but there are plenty of other interesting cars in here, and they come and go daily for sure. So here we have an autocross prepped Miata. Then we have a BMW 1 Series that's getting a host of upgrades that will send the power output quite a bit up. It's getting new turbos, new intercooler, and a bunch of other goodies on it. Here we've got some Ford GT doors that obviously are off a car where the top met the pavement at some point. Curious to know what happened to that car. And over here we've got a M3 track prepped that the owner of the shop owns. And over here we have a pretty awesome Lotus that has some storied history behind it. Here's a closer look at a Ferrari F355. So this is going to be an ongoing restoration project. The shop owner's father bought this car for a pretty good deal, and that's because it needed basically a full restoration. The engine was already out of it, but it did come with the engine and transmission. They just need to be put back in it. There's a story to this. I don't know the full story, but expect to see this on future episodes. And under this cover is the engine, sans cylinder heads for that F355. So the first thing today, we're going to put this quick release mechanism on this Miata steering wheel. So as you can see, this has an airbag wheel, which adds a little bit extra complexity to it. So I've unhooked the battery, I'll undo some bolts on the back side of here, and it should pull the airbag assembly out, making this a little bit easier. And since the airbag wheel is not going back in here, we can remove this airbag tone ring type assembly while still trying to maintain the horn wire. This will be a little complex, but the system's only held in with a few Phillips head screws. So as with any typical automotive modification, we're already at a standstill. There's no way to install this quick release shaft on the steering shaft without totally disabling the auto-canceling turn signals and potentially deleting the horn. Now the horn can be done with some customization by just taking the horn power wire and rigging it up to an external horn, but this self-canceling turn signal mechanism, which is just this plastic tumbler piece, you can see when you turn on the turn signal and you turn the wheel, it cancels the turn signal. That's not going to be able to be used. And you see as you start spinning this or screwing on the quick release steering shaft, it interferes with this plastic collar, and the collar in fact keys into the steering wheel itself, and we're replacing the steering wheel with this aftermarket one over here on the seat, which doesn't have those keys in it. So there's really no way to maintain this, and we need to verify that the owner understands that and wants that to happen. So right now we're waiting to hear back on the owner, so this is currently dead in the water. So in the meantime, I'm taking a look at what Jeremy's working on here, trying to get these struts out here, but they're always more complicated than it seems because you have air lines going into them, then you have these electronic connectors on top and grounds and all of these things. So it's always a matter of figuring out what steps you need to do, what parts you need to take out of the engine bay to actually access the parts you need to remove. So the first thing we're going to do on this Range Rover is replace the front air struts. So you can see this is a genuine Land Rover piece made in Great Britain, but the airbag itself is made in Mexico. So as you can see, these things are conglomerates of various countries. We're always excited to see Range Rovers come in, aren't we? They are pieces of work, let me tell you. When they're working right, they're fantastic. They have so many features, but the catch there is when they're working right. Also doing a transmission service on this, so we've got 7 quarts of this fluid and then a filter in there, I believe. All right, so we've heard back from the owner, and he said that, huh?
What?
What are you doing? Are you working on a Land Rover? Hey, do you like working on Land Rovers?
I love them. I thought you were talking to me.
Oh, wait, maybe I am.
I don't like the engine.
Because I mean, earlier today you said you didn't.
Other than the engine, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Good. I'm glad we figured that out. So the owner got back to us and said that he doesn't mind getting rid of the self-canceling turn signals thing. We will have to do some modifications to the wiring. So the horn harness is hardwired to the airbag mechanism here, so we will have to cut that. As you can see, I've already cut the horn wire, but it still has a connector that allows you to connect it into the main wiring harness. So this is the horn wiring harness, basically. We can connect this into the main car's wiring harness and then run an extra wire going to an external horn switch that can be mounted to the steering wheel. So it'll allow us to maintain the horn functionality while removing the airbag functionality. Unfortunately, we will have to remove this cone right there to remove the self-canceling mechanism, but other than that, it should be pretty easy, and getting this thing back together should be a cinch after that. So the next step is we're going to semi-install this steering shaft adapter. Just spin this on until it bottoms out on the threads, which is about right there, And I'm gonna pull out the set screws here, mark the steering shaft where those set screws go in. I'm gonna take a drill bit and just kind of make some little indentations inside of the steering shaft so that when you put the set screws in, they bottom out in those indentations and this thing doesn't try to unwind itself. So what's the fun to report on this one?
None.
No fun? But you got some rusted bolts maybe?
I got a bolt that's at least seized in there somehow, and the line is being a pain to take off, but
there you go.
So something that should be super easy is turning out to be a little bit of a pain.
Turning out to be a pain. We thought it would be easy because, as you can see, this strut assembly is a complete unit. We don't have to disassemble it and replace components within it. So it was supposed to be just a simple unbolt and put back into place operation. But as you know, as cars are used in the Midwest, salt gets to screws and bolts and nuts, and it makes it a mechanic's nightmare. Or at least adds some complexity and hours to the job. All right, so those are those set screws tied in place, and it is now locked in the main steering shaft. That's not going anywhere. So next step is put the cowling back on that surrounds all this so it doesn't look so raw, and then we'll slip the actual steering wheel adapter on there. So this is the hub that the steering wheel bolts to, and you just pull this back. It has this little rod inside that actually latches into one of these grooves on the steering shaft adapter. So just to show you that, you kind of line up the splines and then you pull this in. Goes into place like that. And then you just bolt your steering wheel into place. There we are. That is done. Camber! Okay, more like broken. So here's the transmission for that F355, and it almost looks like a front-wheel drive car's transmission, or even like a Subaru transmission. That's because it is a mid-engine car, and it has to be very compact to actually fit inside of there. And here is the flywheel assembly for the F355. Supposedly this thing is packed with grease. I don't really know what that looks like on the inside. I haven't taken it apart, but this, of course, a very Ferrari type design that doesn't follow anyone else's design at all. When you pull off all the clothes on one of these, you can see how simple the construction of them actually is. They're not as fancy underneath all the skin as you might imagine. The door panels are pretty simplistic with minimal bracing. It's all genuine leather through the dashboard and everything. But just like any car, it's all pressed steel panels, hand-applied seam sealer, and spot welds. Nothing magical about the prancing horse once you start taking it apart. And you can see once you get outside of the cabin section of the car, you can see that the entire rear end of these cars is just bolted to a monocoque type chassis. And it's just tube frames and square tubing, circular tubing that makes up the rear subframe and engine cradle and rear suspension. So it's a fairly simple design, and it would have to be a hand-built type car. You can see how all the tubes are welded together with some beads of welding here, probably MIG welded, but it's not the prettiest welding, but it's factory original. That's how it would have been. They're sweet cars when they're all put together, but when you see them disassembled like this, you see how simplistic they truly are. And this is how fun is made. You gotta snake this thing in there and undo this airline, which is already loosened, but it's not easy. I'll see you in 2 hours. It's free! So this is your airline that powers these massive struts. It's just a little tiny plastic line. And somehow this isn't the problem, it's something inside of here. Oh, anyway, just gotta remove One more spindle nut here, and this thing's ready to come out. The Archie blows. This is the old one. Just a big bag of air. That's all it is. So it's leaking somewhere along this seam. But it's probably needing replaced anyways, because you can feel this top hat bearing kind of feeling a little rickety as well. So definitely worthwhile replacing that. And here's your airline and strut tower. Beefy multi-link front suspension. Looks like this could probably use some new pads here in the future too. So we're going ahead and put this one into place. You can see it's a much nicer unit, much tighter bearing up top. Let's get it in. What does victory feel like?
Feels glorious.
What did you just win here? The Land Rover has put up a lot of fights, but
it has. We finally got the lower bolt moving on this strut assembly. It had not wanted to move forever, and now it's finally moving.
It's finally doing what it should be doing and coming out.
Why it wanted to put up so much of a fight, I don't know.
Right, this is why anti-seize is important, everyone, is so that you don't have to spend an hour trying to remove one bolt. Look at that. Let's see the middle of that bolt. Yeah, there was some
small amounts of rust.
Yeah. Minor.
Yeah. Nothing huge. You know.
Now that the new struts are installed, it's time to do a transmission fluid change. By just dropping the pan here. We're also going to be changing the filter on the transmission. About 10 down, only like 15 more to go. Bleh. The fluid actually looks pretty decent. It's not completely black.
We're gonna have to fix that.
So we have the transmission pan down, and you can see it is the plastic unit that has the filter as part of it. And there's your sump magnets, but this is not going back in the car. Now the owner wants to swap it to this metal pan with an individual filter. That's a good idea. You can see that this has its own magnets, and it has a kind of fiber gasket that seals it up. This also comes with a brand new bolt kit, and it should be a much more serviceable unit going forward. Bye-bye, Miata. Bye-bye. Good times. So I've got the new pan halfway in. Comes with the new screw kit, which don't have as much shoulder on them, but it should be fine. It's so pretty. No more of that plastic crap under here. So of course, being a Range Rover, it's not a simple procedure actually filling the transmission back up with fluid. In fact, you have to use a pump and pump it in 1 quart at a time.
Well, you gotta fill it up till it dribbles out of this plug, and then from there we'll put the vehicle back down, start it up, run it through the gears. Then we will put our sensor on it from our OBD2 tool, and from there we will wait till the engine is in the optimum prime range of temperatures, and then we'll put it back up, and then we will fill it up again until it dribbles back out of the plug, and then it's full.
So really simple procedure, definitely something you do in your driveway.
Takes 5 minutes.
Takes 5 minutes. Really, really inexpensive fluid. I'm not sure what this costs a gallon, but anytime you see ZF Lifeguard on the bottle, you know it's not exactly something you get at Napa. But it's just one more reason why these things are just expensive to keep on the road. Look at my fancy lime green toolbox. That's how you know they didn't have any other colors left in stock. That is the Range Rover all done. That is one bad car. Pretty sweet Ferrari 458 convertible, and we're doing something with the oxygen sensors on this, right? Yeah.
We're making it faster.
Making it faster, yeah. As if it needed to be faster. We're gonna make it faster. So there's a carbon fiber splitter under here. pretty nice looking. Be very careful putting one of these on the lifts because obviously it's a very low car. You have to even raise it up with these pucks and find just the right spot on the sills. And then back here, we've got spots that are just right for the pucks to sit. So gotta be very careful lifting it in the air. So you can see up there, the oxygen sensors have extenders on them that help it not throw a code.
Yeah, but now I have it tuned, so
now it's tuned, and we're taking the
normal.
taking the extenders out. So pretty quick swap potentially.
Maybe 2 minutes.
But the exhaust is hotter than hell, so that doesn't help matters.
Not anymore.
It don't have it tight anymore.
It's not tight no more.
I get the feeling that when this comes loose, my arm is going to slam straight
Into that.
into that exhaust.
Oh, for sure. There he goes.
Probably going to leave a crazy bunch of noise as well. Way quieter than I expected.
What do you think?
Yeah. Love working on the Ferrari. Fun car to work on.
How about the Mustang?
I love working on that too, except for that whole mad camber type thing that's going on there.
Yeah, it's ready to. I don't even know what the hell
It's
that is.
adjustable camber.
It looks like it's definitely adjusted itself.
Yeah, well, it'll adjust itself back straight when I start rolling forward.
All right, so that's a wrap on today's episode. I hope you guys enjoy this. It's a new format. It's going to keep growing and changing as I figure out how to do this better and better. If you guys have any ideas of a name of this segment, I'll be all ears because I have no idea what to call this thing. Hopefully this will be a weekly addition to the Practical Enthusiast YouTube channel, and hopefully it's entertaining. So as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys again next time.